24.
You are back on the show that is all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. You're listening to Get Down to Business. I'm your host, Shalom Klein, and ever since heard that our next guest would be joining me, I've been excited to talk about communications, about public speaking, because that's everything that Cassandra Willis of Dardis Communications is all about. Cassandra, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I feel lucky to be here. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about Dardis Communications.
We teach people how to speak as well as they think.
Wow.
To speak as well as they think. Don't we all want to do that?
We all want to do that. I love that line. I'm going to have to use that. Speak as well as they think. That's great. So you talk a lot about communications, about public speaking. Who is a public speaker?
Anybody is a public speaker. What I tell the people who take my classes is every time you open your mouth up at work, you're sending out an image. People are judging you just based on the words that you say. Every time we communicate, every time we talk to anybody, we're public speaking.
So there's 5 of us in the studio right now. I am willing to bet that every single one of us spend a lot of time of our weekday in meetings. So tell our listeners a little bit of advice how people can improve their meeting style and how people can present better.
Well, let's separate the two, because meetings are already a challenge. People waste a lot of time in meetings because they're not well focused. You got to start with a purpose. You got to make sure everybody who's in the room has a purpose for being there, and they're always too long. Who says we have to have a meeting for 60 minutes? That's crazy. What a waste of time. Why don't we do it for 30 minutes and see if we can get more done in that amount of time? So part of it's your mindset about meetings. And then when it comes to public speaking, I could go on and on about that. Tell me particularly what you want.
So everybody has defaults on their calendar. I'm curious to hear the default on your calendar. When you set a meeting, how long are you setting your meeting for?
20 minutes.
20-minute meetings. Interesting. How about when you do a phone call, a conference call?
About 30 minutes, but I'm usually always done before 30 minutes.
Wait, so your calls are longer than your meetings?
They can be because you can't see each other. So you miss that nonverbal communication, so it takes a little longer to get your message across. That can happen.
That's fascinating. Do you prefer a phone meeting over an in-person meeting?
No, I love to be in person. Everyone likes to be in person. We want to talk to humans. We love human faces. We loved it since we were babies. We like to talk to people in person. We're missing that in today's workplace.
That's fascinating. What about Skype? Have you embraced video conferencing?
Oh, I've done Skype several times. It's great because you can see the other person, but you don't really get all of the nonverbals. You're not really in the same room, so you can't see them 3D. You miss some elements. But, of course, that's the way the world is, so we can make that work, too. We actually teach a class on virtual presentation skills and how to make it count over the phone.
Fascinating. So, once again, we're talking with Cassandra Willis of Dardis Communications. Cassandra, you've got an interesting background. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up at Dardis and your professional experience.
It's been a crazy road. I started in radio, so it's fun to be here with you, Shalom. And then I worked in television. I was actually a reporter for an ABC affiliate in Cedar Rapids, Iowa for 8 years. And then also in between, I worked for marketing companies and advertising agencies. My most recent job before I took the job with Dardis Communications is I was the very first communications director for the city of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I took that crazy job 5 days after the worst natural disaster in the city's history. So I like a challenge, in case you haven't figured that out.
I could tell. And you were nominated for a regional Emmy Award.
Twice.
That is twice. Oh my God, I'm intimidated over here. That's amazing. And now here you are teaching other people and helping people improve their skills, which is fascinating. So you mentioned that you have classes that are available. Tell us a little bit about some of the offerings that are available for professionals like you and I.
The 4 main topics that we cover are presentation skills, consultative selling skills, business writing, and professional image, which is also known as executive presence. We do customized programming as well based on those 4 topics, but I also do virtual presentation skills and a lot of personal one-on-one coaching. Everything to do with business communications.
After how many emails back and forth will you pick up the phone and you call somebody?
2.
Emails.
And I also think you should have a rule that you never forward past 2 either. If it gets forwarded twice, that means somebody needs to meet or pick up the phone. I hate those long email chains, don't you?
Oh, I absolutely do. They just go back and forth, and those forwards, it starts with one person, and then 25 people later, it's back to that original person. Never a good idea. What about length of emails? How long are most of your emails written?
We actually have a roadmap for that, and I'm going to share it with you right now. This is how to focus an email. It starts with, number 1, Tell the person about the topic. Give them some context. Start in that very first line. The purpose of this email is, or this is what I want to share with you. Then you have to have the discipline in the second part to come up with 3 to 5 headlines about the content or what it is that that person's asking for. And that should be in a bulleted form because our eyes are drawn to white space. Advertisers have proved it over and over again. And the last couple sentences should be next steps or recommendations. So 3 steps. That's it for the very best email. Tell me the context, tell me the top 3 to 5 headlines, and tell me the next steps or recommendation. If you can do that, it's one window.
Are you a believer in making sort of small talk in an email, personal, casual conversation?
A little bit. I mean, you have to show your personality and you have to make sure the person reads it in the right tone because email tone makes a big difference. But I don't waste a lot of time on it because time is money in the business world.
I agree. You need to be brief, and that's what keeps people's attention. What about most of our listeners are small business networkers? I use that term a lot, but small business networkers, they're out there and they're, as I said, meeting a lot of people. Perhaps they're marketing and they're selling all the time. Any advice that you can provide, sort of sell without selling?
I'm going to actually suggest a book first. Daniel Pink wrote a great book called To Sell is Human, and I read it last year. And what he found in his research is we're really all born to sell. We're all trying to persuade someone or convince someone. He calls it move someone. It's not always to get their money. Sometimes it's just to get them to think the way we do or to consider our ideas. We're always trying to persuade, and especially in networking. We teach classes on this, but part of it is building rapport, learning the right questions to ask and the wrong questions to ask in a conversation, and of course always putting the other person first. And then we also have a roadmap for elevator speeches, telling your own story. It's not supposed to be a monologue. It's supposed to be a dialogue.
Absolutely. We are always selling. In our next guest, Sari Klein, we're going to talk a little bit about the job search. And I believe that the advice that you're offering is applicable not only to business professionals, but to job seekers as well. Job seekers are selling, but how much of a conversation can be about you and how much of a conversation should be about the other person?
I've read several books about this. I've heard the 70-30 rule. 70% of the conversation should be about the other person and only 30% about you, and you should be asked about it first before you respond. We love to talk about ourselves. So if you can learn a lot about that other person first, you get inside their mind. You know where they're coming from, and then you can use that information to your advantage in the percentage where you actually respond.
Fascinating. And I'm trying to take advantage of every minute I have over here with Cassandra Willis of Dardis Communications. So such great advice for small business owners, for job seekers. Everybody needs to hear this. And, of course, in a moment or two, we'll have you share your contact information so people can continue that discussion. What about subject lines in an email? I believe that's probably the most valuable real estate. How do you draft a subject line?
I'm so glad you asked. I had a boss one time who said that we could only use 3 subject line starters in the emails we sent to him. Only 3. And here they are. FYI, input needed, action required. FYI, input needed, action required. We could use that in the beginning of the subject line and then colon whatever the topic of the email was. You figured out what he was doing, right?
Sure.
He sorted his email according to action required first, and that's what he responded to first. Input needed, he got to when he had time. And FYI, maybe he'd read it tomorrow. Pretty smart.
Pretty smart. And not everybody will cooperate with that. Some people write the 2-line subject lines, the entire message in the subject line with nothing in the body of the email. That sort of loses your attention pretty quickly. It's almost blaring out, I'm more important than everybody else, and I don't like that sort of thing. Well, you mentioned before about setting the stage and setting the agenda for a meeting. How much time do you spend before each meeting preparing for the meeting? You mentioned most of your meetings are 20 minutes. How long do you spend getting ready?
I spend actually quite a bit of time because I want to make sure that I make the most of the time for the people that are in the room. When you think about it, our most valuable asset is our time. It means so much more to us than our money. So if those people are going to sit in there and listen to me, I better make it worth their while for actually being there. So I spent probably a couple days, if not a week in advance, making sure that I understand what the topic is, making sure we can have an actual effective meeting. I have some rules, like agenda for every single meeting has to be out a week in advance. My recommendation to some people is print out your calendar for tomorrow, the day before, take it home with you before you go to bed that night, look through every single meeting and write down at least 1, 2, maybe 3 things that you want to share during that meeting, which will make the discussion so much better.
Oh, my goodness. Great advice for small business owners, job seekers, entrepreneurs. Everybody should be talking with Cassandra Willis of Dardis Communications. Cassandra, how can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more and learn about the various programs that Dardis offers?
The simplest way is to go to dardiscommunications.com, and Dardis is my boss's last name. D as in dog, D-A-R-D-I-S, communications.com. I actually have a public program coming up in May, and we would love to have you there.
Fantastic. Dardiscommunications.com. Cassandra will have you back on real soon. Get Down to Business is brought to you in part by Everett Wealth Solutions, a registered investment advisor and financial planning firm, a fiduciary advisor that helps you create your personal wealth. Call them at 708-771-7777.
The 2016